Streets of Fire is a film about a city that never existed, built from music, violence, and pure attitude, where every alley feels like a stage and every fight feels like a song. But behind the effortless cool on screen, every frame had to be fought for. From a hero rewritten to fit a myth, to a lead who grew up in front of the camera, to a voice so powerful it had to be constructed. These are 15 weird facts about Streets of Fire, a film that crashed on arrival, survived on style, and became a cult legend by refusing to disappear. Number 1. Paré and Moranis nearly broke the set. On screen, Tom Cody and Billy Fish barely tolerate each other, and off-screen, things weren't much different. Michael Paré later admitted he and Rick Moranis clashed from day one, calling Moranis's relentless insult comedy style infuriating and impossible to deal with. The tension started in Joel Silver's office before cameras even rolled. Moranis looked Paré up and down and fired off, "Do you just act cool, or are you really cool?" Paré took it as a direct challenge, the kind of comment that, in the real world, would have ended with fists, not filming schedules. But Moranis kept going, imitating him, teasing him between takes, lobbing one-liners Paré couldn't respond to without risking the shoot. Comedians, Paré said, were a special breed. They could poke you endlessly because they knew you were contractually trapped. Meanwhile, Moranis had protection, his close friendship with producer Joel Silver. The dynamic only made Paré feel more boxed in, more frustrated, more powerless to react. The surprising twist? Their friction accidentally reinforced the movie's energy. Billy Fish is an irritant. Cody is simmering just beneath his collar. What played out in real life ended up feeding the mythic tension the film needed. Sometimes chemistry doesn't come from harmony. It comes from two actors barely surviving each other. Number 2. The ending that vanished overnight. The finale of Streets of Fire was built around one assumption. Bruce Springsteen's Streets of Fire would close the movie. Jimmy Iovine promised he could secure the rights. Walter Hill trusted him. The entire last concert sequence at the Wiltern Theater was filmed to fit Springsteen's song exactly. And then, Springsteen's camp said no. Suddenly, the production had no ending, no song, and no way to match the footage they had just shot. The Wiltern had already been renovated, meaning the location no longer resembled anything on film. Diane Lane had already moved on to her next project, and even cut her Ellen Aim hairstyle. With continuity broken and the original plan dead, the team rebuilt the ending from scratch. The replacement was Jim Steinman's Tonight Is What It Means to Be Young, a track so explosive it redefined the film's identity. The finale that almost collapsed the film became the moment fans remember most, and that last-minute switch in the music, it ends up triggering one of the biggest surprises in the whole production, a payoff we'll hit later on. Number 3. The version you were never meant to see. In Walter Hill's earliest drafts, the final showdown wasn't a stylized sledgehammer duel, it was a street execution. Raven was supposed to beat Cody bloody, only for Cody to rise, pull a hidden boot knife, and finish the fight the way real street warriors did, fast, brutal, and without mercy. Michael Paré later confirmed the knife kill was fully scripted. Cody wasn't written as a noble hero, he was a product of the world, a man who won by outlasting you, not by out-moralizing you. But once Hollywood saw the script, panic set in. Executives feared audiences wouldn't follow a protagonist who stabbed his enemy to death in cold blood. So the ending was rebuilt. The knife vanished. The duel became ritual instead of murder. Cody knocks Raven down, steps back, and lets the bomber gang drag their leader away in humiliation. That single rewrite shifted everything. Cody stopped being a dangerous street fighter and became a myth. A lone, wandering warrior whose legend mattered more than the body count he left behind. Number 4. Two performers changed everything. Streets of Fire's supporting cast wasn't shaped by the script. It was shaped by two actresses who refused to disappear into the background. Elizabeth Daily looked at her role as Baby Doll and saw a ghost, a cute extra with nothing meaningful to do. She pushed Walter Hill hard for more emotional weight, and he listened. The intimate scene where Baby Doll and Ellen discuss the cost of fame, that wasn't in the script. It existed because Daly asked for it. Across the lot, Amy Madigan did something even bolder. She auditioned for Riva, then set her sights on Mendez, a tough male sidekick originally written as a hulking enforcer. She told Hill and Larry Gross she could play the part better than any guy, and convinced them to gender swap the role entirely. McCoy was born that day. One of the film's most beloved characters exists because an actress refused to settle. Two performers spoke up, reshaped the story, and proved that sometimes the best rewrites happen when the cast demands characters worthy of them. And the casting storms were just getting started. Number 5. Diane Lane became Ellen Aim at 18. Ellen Aim wasn't written for Diane Lane. Early on, the role was circling Daryl Hannah, who met with Michael Pare and seemed poised to lead the film, until she abruptly left to make Splash. Overnight, Streets of Fire lost its star, and Walter Hill had to rethink everything. That's when Diane Lane stepped in. Fresh off The Outsiders, and barely out of high school, she arrived on set with a mix of fearlessness and inexperience that reshaped the entire movie. She literally turned 18 while filming, a teenager suddenly fronting a rock opera action epic, playing a world-famous singer whose voice could ignite a city. Lane later said she couldn't imagine a better group of people to survive each other with for 5 months, a hint at how intense the production became. But her youth gave Ellen Aim something the script never spelled out, a raw, rebellious spark that made her feel like a star being born in real time. What began as a casting crisis became the film's lightning strike, and Lane's performance remains one of the reasons the movie turned into a cult classic. Number 6. The role passed through legends. Tom Cody wasn't supposed to be Michael Pare. In the earliest casting talks, the role went straight to rising star Tom Cruise. But Cruise passed, one of the few action leads he ever walked away from. The part then landed with Eric Roberts, who actually signed on, before abruptly backing out, leaving the production days away from losing its hero entirely. Walter Hill started digging through fresh talent, searching for someone who didn't feel like a studio creation. Then, he watched Eddie and the Cruisers. Pare's brooding presence, the quiet confidence, the working-class gravity. Hill knew instantly that this was Cody. No formal audition, no elaborate screen test, just instinct. Pare wasn't a polished Hollywood star, and that was the point. Hill wanted Cody to feel mythic, rough-edged, the kind of street legend who looked like he'd lived in this neon noir world long before the cameras rolled. The role passed through 2 big names before landing with the actor built for its tone, giving Streets of Fire the outsider energy that defines it to this day. Number 7. The sky wasn't real. Walter Hill wanted a world locked in eternal night, neon rain, smoky streets, silhouettes moving through darkness. But there was one problem. The Universal backlot sat next to Toluca Lake, where noise laws banned gunfire and explosions after dark. So the crew did something insane. They built night. Universal stretched a massive black tarp over multiple city blocks, turning the outdoor streets into a giant indoor soundstage. Inside this artificial midnight, lighting teams sculpted blues, shadows, and steam like painters. Outside, wind fought the tarp constantly, forcing crew members to clamp it down like sailors wrestling storm sails. The result wasn't just a workaround. It became the movie's entire visual identity, a city that lived under a man-made sky. Number 8. This look was no accident. Walter Hill didn't want the bombers to look like random thugs. He wanted them to feel like a tribe carved out of steel, grease, and back alley mythology. The costume team rebuilt their entire aesthetic piece by piece. Bikes stripped and re-chromed, jackets distressed with sandpaper and motor oil, hair cut into rough factory-line shapes that suggested a world with no mirrors, only attitude. Even their beards were sculpted to match the gang's rhythm. The transformation didn't happen overnight. The costume department spent weeks breaking in each leather jacket, running motorcycles through controlled burns to distress the chrome, and testing different oils until the gang looked less like actors in costume and more like warriors who'd been living this life for years. By the time cameras rolled, even the extras started moving differently. The costumes had rewritten their body language. By blending 1950s greaser silhouettes with early 80s punk savagery, the bombers became a fully realized subculture, dangerous, iconic, and instantly unforgettable. And once they built the sky, they had to build the people who owned it. Number 9. That voice isn't who you think. Diane Lane lit up the stage as Ellen Aim, but her voice was something no single singer could create. Jimmy Iovine and Jim Steinman wanted a sound bigger than any one performer, a voice that felt mythic, like a rock legend who could command an entire city with one note. Their solution wasn't to choose a singer, but to build one. They brought in Laurie Sargent for her raw edge and emotional punch, the kind of voice that could break on a lyric and make it feel like heartbreak. Then they layered in Holly Sherwood, whose soaring cathedral power vocals carried the explosive scale Steinman's anthems demanded. Together, they became Fire Inc., a fictional band powered by two real women pushing their limits behind the mic. Every Ellen Aim performance, Nowhere Fast, Tonight is What It Means to Be Young, the opening blast of Sorcerer, is a fusion of two singers breathing life into one icon. It's why Ellen sounds larger than life. She was designed that way. Number 10. A hero without a source. Streets of Fire didn't begin in an office or a studio boardroom. It began on the gritty set of 48 Hours, where Walter Hill showed up between takes with a stack of handwritten notes, scraps of ideas about a world that didn't exist yet, neon rain, rock and roll gunfights, a wandering hero who felt ripped from the pages of a comic book. Except no comic like that actually existed. Hill told co-writer Larry Gross he'd grown tired of adapting other people's characters. If he wanted a mythic pulp legend, he'd have to build one from the ground up. So Tom Cody was born, not as a movie star vehicle, but as Hill's attempt to create the kind of lone wolf action icon he wished he'd grown up reading. From there, the film took shape like a graphic novel unfolding on wet asphalt, stylized streets, a world out of time, and a hero who walked into the frame already feeling like a legend. What began as scribbles on the set of 48 Hours turned into one of cinema's strangest miracles, a comic book movie with no comic behind it. Number 11. One studio walked away. After 48 Hours became a smash, everyone assumed Walter Hill's next film would stay at Paramount. Producer Lawrence Gordon had a deal there. The studio loved Hill's box office momentum, and Streets of Fire seemed like an easy yes. Then Michael Eisner read the script. He didn't see a neon pulp myth. He saw trouble. Tom Cody reminded him too much of Indiana Jones, another rugged Paramount hero, and he didn't want internal competition. So the studio passed, baffled by the film's tone and unsure how to market a rock and roll fable. What Eisner never knew, Hill wasn't planning to stay anyway. He still carried bruises from the Warriors battles, and tensions during 48 Hours hadn't healed. So when Paramount closed the door, Hill didn't argue. He walked. Gordon and Joel Silver took the script to Universal, where executives took one look at Hill's stylized world and said yes almost instantly. Paramount saw confusion. Universal saw a cult legend waiting to happen. Number 12. This was supposed to be Chapter 1. Long before cameras rolled, Walter Hill didn't see Streets of Fire as a movie. He saw it as Chapter 1 of a pulp saga. Early drafts even carried the subtitle, The Adventures of Tom Cody, Book 1, a promise that this tough, blue-collar gunfighter would wander from city to city like a comic book Ronin. Every story would be self-contained, every setting a new neon frontier. Hill and co-writer Larry Gross outlined 2 sequels. The Far City, a harsher, more industrial metropolis where Cody would face a rising criminal empire, and Cody's Return, a final, full-circle confrontation meant to test whether the loner could ever belong to anyone or anywhere. Executives loved the ambition. The trilogy pitch helped sell the entire concept, a rock opera universe built from myth, music, and muscle. But when the film underperformed, the dream vanished overnight. Hill later admitted the stories were ready in his head. The world was built. The hero was drawn. Audiences just never got to see the rest of the legend. Number 13. It failed, then wouldn't disappear. When Streets of Fire hit theaters in June 1984, nobody knew what to do with it. Universal tried selling it as an action movie, a rock opera, a retro fantasy, but the film didn't fit any box the studio understood. Reviewers dismissed it as style over substance. Audiences expecting a conventional blockbuster walked into a neon fever dream they didn't recognize. By opening weekend, producer Joel Silver received the blunt studio call, "We're dead." The failure crushed Walter Hill's planned trilogy before it ever began. Tom Cody's future evaporated, and the movie quietly limped out of theaters. But on VHS and late-night cable, something unexpected happened. Viewers who missed it the first time got swept up in the Jim Steinman anthems, the rain-soaked backlot city, and Hill's pulp mythic attitude. The movie started circulating at midnight screenings. Fan clubs emerged. Critics revisited it and found depth in the very strangeness that once confused them. By the 90s and 2000s, Streets of Fire wasn't a flop anymore. It was a cult ritual, a film too weird to succeed, and too bold to ever disappear. Hey, that's usually how these movies find their audience. If this neon-soaked cult favorite still pulls you back in, you can bring Streets of Fire home. Just check the links below for the Blu-ray or DVD. Thanks for the support. It really means a lot. Now, let's ride back into the rain. Number 14. He wasn't told the truth. In 2008, director Albert Pyun shot Road to Hell, an unofficial sequel that looked legit only because Michael Paré returned as Tom Cody, and Deborah Van Valkenburg came back as Riva. Paré later revealed the truth. Pyun told him Universal and Walter Hill had blessed the project. They hadn't. Pyun also claimed he had permission to use a Diane Lane lookalike. That was untrue too. Paré worked just 5 days before realizing the production was nothing like what he'd been promised. The film was chaotic, cheaply assembled, and critically dismissed. missed. Instead of a long-awaited continuation, it became a cautionary tale, a sequel fans wish had stayed buried. Number 15. Another country saw it first. While Streets of Fire struggled in America, Japan treated it like a revelation. Critics awarded it the prestigious Kinema Junpo Prize, and young filmmakers immediately absorbed its neon grit, rock opera energy, and retro future world building. Its fingerprints are all over early cyberpunk. Megazone 23, Bubblegum Crisis, Golf Force, and AD Police all echo Hill's rock and ruin mythology. Character archetypes, city skylines, biker gangs, Japan pushed those ideas further than Hollywood ever dared. Streets of Fire didn't just become popular there. It became foundational, a creative spark that helped ignite the entire 80s anime revolution. Bonus fact: I Can Dream About You wasn't written for the movie, but the moment Dan Hartman's voice hit the soundtrack, it became one of the film's emotional anchors. The song didn't take off immediately, but once Streets of Fire came out and the track started getting radio and MTV play, it exploded. Hartman released his own single that same year, and suddenly it was everywhere. Radio, MTV, record stores, giving him one of the biggest hits of his career. The track carried the film's romantic pulse and helped cement the mythic chemistry between Pare and Diane Lane. A song that wasn't meant for the movie ended up defining it and outliving it. Streets of Fire was never built for the mainstream. It was built like a dream, neon-soaked, rule-breaking, and unapologetically strange. The studio didn't understand it. Audiences didn't know what to do with it. But the people who found it later, they felt it. Its glowing backstreets shaped anime. Its rock opera pulse rewired music videos. Its pulp heroes inspired filmmakers who grew up watching it at midnight. Tom Cody rode out of town, but the world he came from never disappeared. It just waited. If this movie ever burned itself into your memory, drop a comment. Tell us what cult classic we should chase next. Because some films aren't made for opening weekend. They're made for the people who discover them years later and never let them go.